they didn't want to conquer the barbarians after all, so instead they built a chain of forts all along the borders, including the River Rhine and the River Danube. Does this sound familiar? Berlin Wall, anyone? In the winter of 406 AD, the River Rhine froze over. The tribes who had been left out in the cold really got their skates on, and they invaded the Western Empire. The Romans used an old tactic. They made friends with the Visigoths, and they tried to hire them to do their dirty work, fighting off the latest bunch of uninvited barbarians. Over the next few hundred years, the barbarians started searching for sunnier places to live, as they weren't happy with their current living conditions. This sounds familiar, as the East Germans tried to run away to West Germany when they weren't happy with their living conditions, trying to search for sunnier places to live. I can spot a few trends coming through. Can you? The Romans had a tough time beating off these invasions. They were so short of troops that they started hiring other barbarian tribes to fight for them. The standard of the Roman government was dropping, and they became very heavily dependent on their military. This is very much like the Germans in the Cold War. Maintaining an army to defend the border of the empire from barbarian attacks was a constant drain on the economy. Military spending left few resources for other vital activities, such as providing public houses and good quality roads and adequates. Frustrated Romans,
I'm so frustrated.
lost their desire to defend the empire, and the empire had to begin hiring soldiers recruited from the unemployed city mobs, or worse, foreign countries. Such an army was not only unreliable, but very expensive. The emperors were forced to raise taxes frequently, which in turn led to increased inflation. We've actually got a very special treat for you. We've managed to get a Roman into the studio to talk about inflation, so without much further ado, over to you, Henry.
Yes, it is true. I suffered from inflation. Once the Romans stopped conquering new lands, the flow of gold into the Roman economy decreased. Gold was being spent by the Romans to pay for luxury items. This meant there was less gold to use in coins. As the amount of gold used in coins decreased, the coins became less valuable. Merchants raised the prices on the goods they sold. I could only afford a bunch of grapes a day. My family suffered. Eventually salaries had to be paid in food and clothing, and taxes were collected in fruit and vegetable.
Tax returns!
What's it this week?
You owe me 2 mushrooms, a pepper and an apple.
But that's all the food I've got!
I'm sorry, sir. Government policy.
When in Rome.
Seeing as next week's episode's on the Cold War, we at the studio thought we might relate a little and talk about urban decay. Wealthy Romans lived in a domus, now known as a house, with marble walls and floor of intricate glass tiles, much like ours in the studio. However, some Romans weren't so lucky. They lived in very small and smelly conditions. This is a bit like Germany, where the West were living in nice conditions and they had prosperous lifestyles. However, this was not the case in the East, and they lived in small and cramped conditions. It was simply inhumane. Before this week's episode of Back in Time with me, Rod Hart, ends, we're just going to summarise what we've learnt today. After the Roman Empire started to decline, the reasons were very political and economic, and they had problems with foreigners. After the guards killed communists, they sold power to the highest bidder. This led to chaos every time a leader died within the working class. There was also chaos within the working classes in Germany. All leaders became dictators, and almost all were killed by their guards. The Roman Empire had 26 leaders in the next 50 years. A leader had to pay his army well to keep them happy so that they would fend off invasions. This led to high taxes and inflations. Borders were left open as Romans fought amongst themselves. Diocletian, who was elected by the army, and Constantine each set up strong one-man rules during their time as leaders. They initiated many reforms, such as farmers had to stay on their farms, ones that left were hunted down and killed. Town officials had to collect taxes and pay the difference between what the state wanted and what they collected. Government workers had to keep their jobs for life, and their children had to do the same jobs as them. The Roman Empire was split by Diocletian into East and West, much like Germany. The new capital was Constantinople because the East was richer than the West. Vandals, a really barbaric German tribe, took Rome. The Romans had hired Germanic soldiers to fight for Rome, and these soldiers eventually overthrew the Western Roman leader Romulus Augustulus, and they were made the German ruler in 476 AD. This was the end of the Roman Empire in the West. However, the Eastern tribe part of the empire would keep on going for another 1,000 years. Sadly, that's all we've got time for this episode of Back in Time. So it's goodbye from history and hello to future.